What happens when there's inevitably, you uncover something that's harder than you thought, you run into some sort of issue, there's other things you're trying to maintain. Like, how do you keep the teams always hitting those dates?
Yeah, that's a little bit more art than science sometimes. I mean, the first part of, let's talk about the hard part of shipping on the date, which I think is like the go-to-market part of it, and then we'll come back to the engineering part of it. The reason, and this started before I joined Drift, the reason we pick like kind of the first Tuesday of every month is because no one had to communicate. It's another simplification. No one had to communicate when they had to start preparing, right? And so one of the challenges at any company is, let's say you're at a normal company, bigger company that does 2 or 3 releases a year, which is pretty typical. It's like, hey, when's that release coming out? When are we going to start planning it? Oh, should we start doing weekly? Should we do monthly? Right? And it's not a system. It's like a project every time. And so what we see here is our product like literally it'll be Wednesday, the day after we shipped, and the product marketing manager is like, hey, Maggie, I'd like to sit down and talk about what's coming out next month.
Right.
And
true.
it's just a system. It's just a heartbeat. And what that does is it also creates a little bit of a tidal wave amongst all the employees, because they know it's coming, right? It's like just like any other kind of cadence that you have. So I think that is the really hard part to get momentum, because as a product manager, I'm sure you've shipped products that no one uses because marketing never told anybody about it, right?
Yep.
And this avoids that. On the engineering side, I think that comes down to just somewhat of like good engineering management, whatever technique you use, which is feature freezes or betas. Here, what we try to do, and this wasn't always true early on, but I think now, is we usually aim for at least 5 beta customers well before the launch. And we've built that into our system because the product marketing managers are going to want quotes and stories from them.
Right. The social proof.
And
I think that might actually be the reason why we had to make that a rule.
Yeah, why is that? You want to tell that story?
I was on a marketable moment with no beta customers. That was not a super fun one. What did we learn in that? Never do that again.
No, but why?
This is why having your boss on a podcast is tough. I think the biggest thing I learned on that was that we didn't know, we had a lot of assumptions about how something would be used and when it would be used and what it would be important for, but we learned very quickly that it was too hard for customers even to find where we had put the link to the feature. And then we learned that the value wasn't exactly as what we thought it was. And so our messaging wasn't super correct. Where we put it wasn't super correct. We could have made it a lot better if we'd even had one person give us feedback.
Yeah. So we always had like kind of an unwritten rule of these beta users, but it became a written rule thanks to Maggie here. I think it's a good practice, nonetheless. We learned from it and we iterated. That's one of the great things about doing this 12 times a year, is we learn really quickly and we build up the system and make it kind of bulletproof. So right now, what most of the things that you'll see us ship, actually all of the things, have been in the wild for at least 4 to 6 weeks. So that removes a lot of the risk of something breaking last minute or something like that. Now, was that always true? No. There were early days of Drift where it was like, the Friday before, and it's like, oh my God, the thing doesn't work, and we're scrambling over the weekend. But
I think that also built up a cultural norm on the team that we don't miss those dates, right? And I think that part of the commit to a date and hit the date is that everyone has to believe in the date. Right? It's not just a random date, because I think I've been on other teams, other companies where, we say something like, oh, we're going to be done with this on this day. And the date comes and you're not super done or you're close, but there's no pressure to get the thing out the door. But having those really hard deadlines that are public, that even not only public to the company, but public to the market, mean that you don't have an excuse not to hit them.